Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Focus on DatoCMS course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, marcelo@headlesscreator.com. Send me an email with questions, comments, ideas, whatever you like. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today, we're working with localized content, and more specifically, how do we create content models that are localized? How do we manage the localized settings? How do we work with media that's localized, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to cover today. So let's get started. So let me show my screen here. And for those of you that have any questions, you have a chat. Type the questions in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that chat, and once in a while, if there's any questions, I'll answer them for you. But let's talk about what is a locale. A locale is a combination of location and language. That's it. So for example, Argentina and Spanish would be a locale, but you can also have Mexico in Spanish, and you can have, and that's why it's called a locale, because maybe you can have a different kind of context around a blog article that's focused on the Mexican audience versus the Argentinian audience, even though the language is still Spanish. Now, for example, you could do the same thing with English. You can have British English or UK English and US English or Australian English. Now, they're all English, but the locale, the location makes a big difference, right? In how you speak to that audience. There may be a variety of different words you use, there's context, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes to that. So that is what is a locale. Let me tell you how does DatoCMS support locales? So this is a Miro board that is accessible later on demand via the bonus material. So make sure you get your account at headlesscreator.com. All right. So it's important that you understand this before we jump into DatoCMS. But you've got DatoCMS at the top level, right? Keep in mind that DatoCMS has the ability to have multiple environments. You can have a master environment, you can have a staging environment, you can have a testing environment, so on and so forth. At that level is where you set up locales. What does that mean? The implication is that you can have an environment that has 3 locales, and then you can have a different environment that only has 2 locales. And all those settings are specific to the environment. So keep that in mind if you're running into issues and going, well, I set this up before. Make sure you're in the right environment. Now, within the environment itself, you have settings. Under settings is where you actually will add locales. Don't worry, I'm just giving you an overview here. We're going to jump into DatoCMS and I'll show you. So that's where you add and enable multiple locales. Then you have content and content model and media, right at the right below the environment. For content, you have global settings, which you can localize. That's for your entire site. And then entries, you can localize entries depending on what fields and content types you decided to allow to localize. And I'm gonna show you that. At the content model level, you have content types and blocks. Okay, and this is really important. I'm gonna show you. But content types can have fields, same with blocks. Blocks can have fields. However, content types, you can enable field level localization. So you can say, I want this field to be localized, but not this field. So that means that all locales will have the same content for that one field that is not localized. However, blocks cannot be localized at the field level. And some of you go, wait a minute, yes, I can. No, I can't. The actual block itself, the fields can't be localized, and I'll show you in DatoCMS. But when you add that block, that structure as a modular block into a content type field, you can then enable localization in that field. However, what that implies is that the entire structure is either going to be localized or not localized. So for example, I'll show you some address blocks that I have that has address, city, state, zip. Basically, when I add it to a field, all of those fields will either be localized or not localized. I can't say only localize the address field in this block. That would be a nice feature. Maybe DatoCMS will enhance that in the future, but right now you can't do that. And then media-wise, you can localize media in the sense that there's default metadata in custom data fields, custom metadata fields. You can localize those, but you cannot have multiple image in one media that says this image for Spanish, this image for English, this image for Chinese. However, I'm going to show you a workaround that will work. And then the final piece that you can localize, it's the actual interface of the CMS, where you go in and when you're working on the CMS. So the admin piece, you can actually localize that into a variety of language that they've translated already. So, all right, so that is the overview. It's important to understand this. I'm going to go back and forth with this diagram so you know where we're at within DatoCMS, so you know what things you can and can't do. And you can use this as a way to debug any issues you may have with localization as well. All right. So let's start with the easy part. I'm going to start with localizing the CMS environment. You can see that I have everything in English here, right? You have settings, media, API Explorer. What I'm going to do is you can go into your profile right here. Let's see if we can go this a little larger. Just sometimes it distorts things. But here into your profile, you'll go into localization settings. And there, under language, you can change it to whatever language you want. So for example, let's say I want in Spanish, which I understand Spanish. I'll click on Spanish, click on Save Settings. And now you have Contenido, Explorador de API, Ajustes, Nuevo Registro, right? Everything is in Spanish. So that's the first thing you could do is localize the CMS admin interface, which has nothing to do with the content you're creating, but the interface itself. If you have users that speak other language, this is a great little feature that I personally like. Let's go ahead and put it back into settings. We'll go back to English and click on save. So now we're back to English. So that's the first thing you can do with localization. So now let's go ahead and create entries. We're just going to create a simple, I have a very simple author content type here. Very simple content type. We're going to go ahead and create a new record. And I'm going to say under record here, I'm going to put in Marcelo Lewin, and we'll say the founder of headlesscreator.com. And then this is a field pointing to a block, a content structure, right? A block. So I'm gonna add a new address, and I'm gonna say 111 East Street in some city, and then we'll say New York, and we'll say USA. Okay, we'll go ahead and click on save. Alrighty, we just have basically here just an entry. That's it. No, in English, you can see basically that's all we have. That's the only language we have. So how do you know what language you have? Well, let me go ahead and show you. Let's go into settings. And under settings here, you can see right here we have supported language, and we say English. Now, this is where you can actually add more locales. And I'm going through my list here to make sure I'm covering everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the Spanish. Now, if you type in Spanish, you see that there's a bunch of Spanish locales. Remember, language and location. So Spanish Argentina, Spanish Bolivia, Spanish Chile, right? I'm going to, of course, select Spanish Argentina. We'll do that. You can, of course, they also have just a regular Spanish, which it's an all Spanish. Doesn't matter the language. We can do that one. We'll just do that. Let's just keep it like that. Simple. I'm going to click on save. Okay. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do now, let me make sure here, is we're going to go now back into content. Let's go back to author. We're going to go back into here, and all of a sudden, magically, automatically, we'll have a Spanish version. Okay. And then, so there we go. We've got my biography in English, and we have, wait, it's showing I'm the founder of Headless Creator in Spanish as well. That is really strange. Let's go look at settings, models. Let's go to author. Let's go to biography. We don't have enable localization on this field turned on. That's the problem. So for example, if I go back to content, I knew I was wrong, of course. If we go back to content, go back to here, and I go to Spanish, and I go and change this and say, here is my Spanish biography. And click on save. Go to English. It says, here's my Spanish biography. Okay. So one thing I want to do, let me check real quick. under settings, models, author, and let's go to the edit field. Yeah, let me turn this off for a second. I'll explain what's going on in just a second, but I'll go back to content, author, and here we go. So you saw that because I changed it, because I changed the, I turned off all localization and everything, we only have English. So now to actually turn on localization, remember in settings here, all you're saying is, that had just happened. All you're saying is, hey, I want to support these localizations or these locales. When you go into a model, you then have to turn on the actual localization for whatever field you want to localize. For example, I want to localize first name and last name because that's going to be pretty much the same thing on all locales. But I do want to localize biography. So I'm going to go to edit field, enable localization, click on save. And now when we go to content, Marcelo, we'll change this back to here's my English biography, and I go to Spanish. I'm going to tap in, here is my Spanish biography, or we'll say, aquí está mi biografía. Okay, click on save. Okay, it's been updated. So if I go to English, you can see English biography. Go to Spanish, Spanish biography. Now, I turned off the localization on the structure field to show you that you can see first name and last name and this field, the address field, it's the same on both. If I change this here, I go streets, for example, under Spanish, click on save. When I go to English, it's also streets because I don't have localization turned on. Let's save it. Let's go back to settings, models, author. Let's go back to address details, click on edit and say enable localization. And now when we go back to content, author, you'll see that in English we have that, but in Spanish we don't have an entry yet. We can create a new entry. We can say, hey, just copy from English, and then we can adjust. So we can say calle, save, and in English we have street, in Spanish we have calle, okay? So we did that. Now, of course, I didn't show you how you can only, remember I was telling you that in blocks, they can't be localized, but here I'm localizing them. Well, what I said is they can't be localized at the field level, and I'll show you that. So here, when I create an address, you have to localize the entire address structure, okay? So if we go back to settings and models and author, you can see that all of these fields, I can click on edit field and enable localization for this field. But if I go to blocks and go to any of these fields and click on edit, there is no localization setting. I cannot say enable localization. Now, I would have liked to be able to do that here because then I can basically only localize certain fields or not, right? Within the structure itself, but you can't do that. So basically, when you assign the structure to a field in a content model, as I'm doing here, that's what you could say enable localization, but then it's the entire structure. Under validations, you select which structure, and then it's the entire structure that either can be localized or can't be localized. Okay. Now, let's see, for example, I want to, you have a rule that says, look, I don't want to force the authors to constantly enter a localized content. Sometimes they can leave it empty. We really don't need it. Sure, let's do this. We'll go to Spanish. Let's go ahead and erase that. Okay, we'll click on save and oh, couldn't update the record. Why couldn't it update the record? Well, first of all, we set biography to required. That's number one. So you can't submit it if a field is required empty. Okay, but we're not going to do that. But that's not really the problem. The problem is if we go to settings, we go to models, we go to author, and we click on edit, you'll see under additional settings that I have all locales required. That means that you have to enter information for all locales before saving. If you don't, it's not going to allow you. Okay, let's turn that off. That should be simple enough. Click on save. We did it. Let's go to content. We'll go back to Marcelo, and Spanish is there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and click on save. And oop, Nope, could not update the record. Why is that? What's going on? I just turned off, right? We just turned off the the entry of all locales. What's going on is that we're still showing the Spanish locale entry here at this entry level. In this cogwheel here, you can click on that and you can see where it says Spanish will say delete. What it warned me was, I just didn't read it because I know what it said, but it said, look, you're about to delete all the content for this locale in this entry. Are you sure? Yes, I am. So now I can click on save and look, it's saved. Because what we said is for this entry, we're only going to track English. We're not going to track Spanish. Now, let's say you change your mind and you go, you know, we should have a Spanish version of this. Then you just go back to the cogwheel under Spanish, click on plus, and now you have the Spanish version. And now we enter mi biografía. Click on save, and now we have both English and Spanish. Now, because we are not forcing to show when we create a new record, we're only going to have English, okay? So if you want to have a Spanish, the author is going to have to click on add Spanish and then be able to, for this particular entry, because we're not forcing it. If you want to force it, then you got to turn it on at the content model level, okay? So we'll click on delete on that. Okay. Let's see. All right. So what I wanted to show you how you can have more than one locale, right? I'll show you by going into settings. Oh yeah, discard, no problem. Let's go to settings and let's add French. We'll add French, click on save. And again, if you have any questions, type them in the chat and I'll answer them without a problem. So now we have 3. Let's go back to content. Let's go back to entry here. And you see I have English and Spanish in this one, but not French, because we're making it where it's not mandatory. I can click on this and then add new locale. And we'll add it in there, it's French. So now I can type in my biography in French because I do not know French. But you can see that address, because it is localized, is not there. I can click on save. So if I go to English, we have the address. Spanish, we don't have the address. We'll copy from English and we'll put in Español. And on French, we'll copy from English and we'll say in French. Click on save. And now we have English version, Spanish version, French version. Okay? So we're all good. That's how you can work with a variety of locales. Okay. Let's make sure I got everything covered here. We covered adding more locales. Okay, let's see. Alrighty, sounds good. So I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover from the entry perspective. I want to make sure I have a note here about localizing blogs. I want to make sure I covered all of that. Good. Okay, yep, we did good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I want to talk to you about global settings. If you go to content under settings here, you'll have global settings. And you can see that we have English, Spanish, and French. If you don't have localization turned on, so let's remove all these. And now that we removed them, remember, it's going to warn us that all content related to those localized entries are gone. So it's okay, that's fine. So now if I go to content, under settings, we only have just English version. If we go back to settings and add Spanish, save, we go to content. And remember, under content, here, we have global settings and then we have entries. So we cover the entries, now we're talking about global settings. So under settings, we now have a favicon, global SEO settings, and then the ability to prevent indexing by search engines. This is site-wide. The only thing you can localize is the global SEO settings. I cannot, for example, go into Spanish, change this into this, click on save, and I go back to English. It's the same. Same thing with prevent your site from being indexed. It's the same for all locales, okay? The only thing you can do, which you already see here, is if I go to Spanish, you can add a new edit SEO settings. And if you have French, you can do that. So this is the only thing from a global settings that you can localize. Keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm not going to answer this information because you understand what I mean. All right. There's one more thing, actually two more things that I want to talk to you about. First of all is media. So let's go to settings. I'm going to remove that. Now we're going to go to media and we're going to look at an image. And you can see that an image has image information. We have some default metadata. We have the ability to add custom data, categorization, which is a lot of it is automatic, who created it, so on and so forth. So let's turn on localization again. Let's add Spanish and let's add French. Why not? We'll click on save. Now, if we go to media and click on this, you go like, well, everything looks the same. Not really. There's this new pull down menu. This pull down menu is for the default metadata section right here only. Everything else can't be localized. Categorization can be localized. Creator, records using this asset, nothing to do with that. It replaces the asset. That can't be localized. This image is the same image for all locales. Keep that in mind. But the default metadata in English, you can have default metadata with its own custom data. Then I can go to French or Spanish and put in Spanish. Just do that here. Add some new tags. Click on, yeah, we'll have to put in something. And if I go back to English, you see it's at its own custom data with its own title, Spanish, and then of course French is completely empty because I didn't add anything. So from a media perspective, you can localize the metadata, but you can't really localize. You can't have multiple. Well, you could have also like the focal point, as you can see here. You can do that. So I forgot to mention that. So if I go to English, then you have the English focal point. So let's say for the US, people like Spock more, but for French, they like Kirk more. I don't know if that's true, just as an example. But we can change and say, well, I want a different image for I want to have one entry of Spock, but I want a different image for Spanish versus a different image for English marketing. You can't do that I know of. If I'm mistaken, please feel free to correct me, DatoCMS, but I don't see that here. Okay, so what do we do now? How can we fix that issue, right? Is there a way to fix that issue? There definitely is a way to fix that issue. So let me show you how. What I recommend you can do is you can create an asset wrapper around. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to settings, models. I'm going to create one called blog images, or blog image, because it'll hold multiple images, but it's one entry, right? Blog image. And we're good with that. And we're going to say that in this case, I'm going to say that all locales are not required. You can leave them empty, right? Only if you want to change the image for the locale. I'm going to click on save. And then let's add, or I'm just going to add two fields just to keep it simple. We're going to, the first one will be image name. I'm not going to localize that. The second one that we add, it's going to be a media. And it'll be a single asset and we'll call it image asset. And I want this localized. I'll click on save. And let me show you what happens now. Now, because I've created a wrapper around the media, now what we can do is we can go to the content. Let's create under blog image, we'll create a new record. And I'm going to call it Spock. So I'm going to have one image called Spock. And I'm going to say from media library. And I'm going to say Spock. This one is going to be the Spock one. Perfect. Save. Now I'm going to add Spanish, right? And look at that. I'm able to add another image. So I'm going to say, well, for Spanish market, it's going to be this one. And for the French market, it's going to be, I don't know, we'll just call it, we'll just get pizza. Why not? So now the Spock entry image only, I don't have to worry about localizing because I know, look, if it's Spock for English, show this one. For Spanish, show this one. And for French, show this one. Of course, that wouldn't be true. But so how would you use that? Well, in author, I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to author. I'm going to get at, let's suppose we have an author image, for example, right? And the author wants to have a different style of image for each locale. I'm going to add a field, and instead of adding a media, don't add a media. We're going to add a link to a reference, and it's a single reference in this case, and we're going to go author image. We don't need to enable localization here because the image itself is already localized. I'm going to click on validation, and I'm going to say only accept blog image. Click on save. Okay, so now we go to content, blog image, or author. I'm going to click on me. And for my image, which I have here, I'm going to say from library, and I'm going to pick Spock. Click on save. And that's it. I just attach one image, right? The front end will decide which image to show, and I only have one entry to manage, not 3 separate images to manage in media, right? Because instead of going to media and working with these 3, all I need to do is under content, image, I can just manage this one, and I go, here's the English, here's the Spanish, and here's the French. And let's say, oh no, for the French, really, let's go ahead and put in this one, because I want the French and the Spanish to be, or French and English to be the same. So if we go to the author, there's only one entry called Spock, but when I click on it, I can see all the versions in all the languages. So that's kind of a workaround. If you want to just have one reference to an image, but or one reference to an image entry, but then be able to manage that for all the locales, since you can't really have 3 different versions in here. That would be kind of cool. Again, as far as I know, the only thing you can customize from the localization perspective is default metadata and the focal point. That's about it. All right, so that takes care of that. Finally, the only thing extra I wanted to tell you, and I'm not going to go deep into this because I have an entire lesson on this called Using Roles for Content Governance in the Focus on DatoCMS course. So if you go here under administrators, I believe it is, yeah, using roles for content governance right there. So you can get it there, but you need an account, of course. But what I want to show you is creating it with, now that we have localization turned on, well, now let's say you want to have a translator that only works in a particular locale, that can only touch certain entries. I'm going to go through this real quick, watch that other lesson to get into the real details, how to create roles, custom roles, inheritance, and all that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to settings, I'm going to go to roles, I'm going to create a new role called Spanish translator. I'm going to leave all of this the same, but I'm going to say inherits from editor. And again, I'm not explaining all of this because this is just to show you an example, but you can look at that actual lesson. I'm going to click on save. And then I'm going to go to change permission records, which is basically like going to content permissions and then Spanish translator, which you see it there. And then I'm going to do under record permissions, I'm going to add any record. And I'm going to say can edit. So I'm going to overwrite what's being inherited by anyone, but only Spanish content. And by doing this and assigning a user to this role, that user will only have access to the Spanish entries. So that way they can't mess around with French, they can't mess around. So then you would create another role, maybe called French translator, that could work on just French entries. Okay, that is it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Yep, I think I covered it all. I just wanted to make sure here. Let's see if there's any questions. No questions, but thank you, Jamie, for that. I really appreciate that comment. Alrighty. Thank you so much for attending this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I got many more focus on DatoCMS lessons coming up. I have many more lessons on a bunch of other headless CMSs. Like I said, we're about to launch in December a personalization course. So go to headlesscreator.com, get your free account. You're not going to regret it. So again, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed it. For those of you watching live in the US or wherever you're at and you celebrate Thanksgiving, mainly people in the US, enjoy it. I'm off for the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, and then of course the weekend. So I'm going to take a little break, but I'll be back next week. So until then, thank you to everybody. Have a great one. Cheers.